Check, check, check. What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Ow. Thanks for tuning on in. Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Doing a little last day of daddy duty here at the home studios. It was my son's meet the teacher day. My daughter's going to middle school. Not ready for these steps in life, man. So enjoying this one. We'll be back with Leroy on Thursday, but I did get a chance to listen in on Mike McDaniel, and I got to say, I was a little taken aback. Now, you got to grade this stuff on a scale because this is the most, uberly positive coach I've ever heard in my life. This guy is a delight, a little bit wacky, rambles sometimes, but I love him. He's our beautiful weirdo coach who is just like quirky and excellent, and I just find him to be a delight. But I actually think that, we saw a little bit of Mike McDaniel being annoyed this morning in response to the Dolphins' first joint practice with the Falcons, and was basically just painted with brushes that it was completely average. So just for clarity's sake, recording this right as they're about to go on the field. Maybe they ball out today. We'll react to that. Tua's going to talk today, see what he's got to say about a thing or two. But Mike McDaniel, I was interested in a lot of this because, look, this is the second year of his offense. They're trying to clean some things up, and he did not seem like his jovial self today. Still kept it measured, but I was clearly trying to get across the message that he's not exactly thrilled with where things were at after their first joint practice with the Falcons.
If the goal is, average, then I was super pumped. I really like joint practices for the sake of, I want everyone's best effort. The tricky thing about it is, and as I've learned over the course of my career, so what if the offense had the greatest practice in the history of all practices, or the opposite happens? It's the worst practice. What does that mean for today? And that's kind of my point. Is there was stuff that irritated me. There's stuff that pumped me up. We did physically strain through some heat. Against a new opponent. The main focus to me was that practice purposeful? How do you make it purposeful? Your approach today, and it's not the same mistakes. That we have procedural penalties. I'm hoping to not have any today.
All right, so I'm going to continue on because he goes on for like 3 minutes here in typical McDaniel fashion. It was even long for Mike McDaniel. But yeah, basically paints it with the brush of average. If it was average, I'd be super thrilled. I was like, damn, all right. So you weren't very pleased with it at all. Interesting that, he mentions pushing through the heat. Now, I don't know if you guys are tuning in, you're not South Floridians. We're melting down here. I mean, we're melting. I know all over the place it's like hotter than it's ever been, but it's like, August is always uncomfortable, but like it's been this kind of uncomfortable now for like 3 months, and now we're getting into what's typically like the hottest, muggiest months there are. It's raining, downpours every single day. I can't even imagine what it's like practicing in this stuff, which in a roundabout way does get them ready for the season. Remember, they had the message last year, "I wish it were hotter," on the shirts, and that was one of the things with the teams that come down here in the in the early parts of the year. It's their big home field advantage. Everybody knows. Every Dolphin fan knows. It's like usually amazing starts, December swoon. That's what you're always looking out for. That's always what like you're nervous about. And this year, it's a little bit interesting because remember last year you had Bill Belichick come down here, and you had a lot of teams that were like trying to figure out, how to deal with this heat. Josh Allen's still whining about the heat, a couple weeks ago on a podcast. And this year it's a little interesting because the Dolphins only have one home game in September. One damn home game in September. And, you figure, like, I don't know if that's by design or what. Now, on the benefit of that, December is going to be chock full of home games, which is great, I think. If you're thinking about what matters more, the heat now or being able to get a lot of home games in the close, I'd say closing with the home games. I think not having to go to Buffalo, not having to go to New England, not having to go to New York, finishing against, Tennessee, New York, Dallas, your one tough home game in those real harsh conditions is one tough road game, is at Baltimore. So thought it was interesting that he was mentioning the struggles of them pushing through the heat, if that was a real problem of it. But yeah, the procedural penalties, like, it's a thing that does hang over, because as much fun as the Dolphins had last year with this offense, how much fun the fans have with it, that's definitely something that they're making note of, trying to get cleaned up this year. You don't want to be, Fangs has even mentioned it. It has been everybody who gets to that podium, Tyreek Hill, Tua, Mike McDaniel, Fangs, who wasn't even here last year, that has sounded like the biggest point of emphasis out of anything, that they cannot afford these knucklehead penalties that cost the offense and slows things up. And sounds like he has not been happy that it's still been an issue. And especially with particular people. Here's a little bit more of McCochin.
If we have some, as long as it's not the guys that did it the day before, I can work with that. It's when yesterday was a waste, then it's a bigger issue. So, I was happy that we worked, for where we're trying to go. I shouldn't be really happy with any practice in terms of we're good. It's not like that. Last year Philly is a great example.
All right, I'll get to this Philly stuff in a second, but like, understanding that it's one of these things where it's like, okay, well, we really should, but like, ultimately what he's trying to say, I hated yesterday's practice. Like, he's not satisfied with, I don't even know if he's really satisfied with how things are going right this minute with the offense and how things are trying to come together. I find that interesting, because you're like, this guy, very jovial, usually always a glass half full guy, still wants to be that, but you can tell some things are definitely annoying him, which I find fascinating, that he is, looking at this, going into this first preseason game, which I don't know how much we're going to learn. It sounds like we're going to have a backup QB showdown between Mike White, who I don't know if he completely trusts with the offense yet, based on his comments today, where, they're bringing this new guy in. And I do think that that's one of the things that they're hoping is an advantage with things. Like, yeah, Mike White has more experience than Skylar Thompson, but Skylar Thompson's got more experience with this offense. So even though he says it doesn't dictate it doesn't indicate who's going to get the job out of the gate on this thing. We saw with Skylar Thompson last year, like, Skylar Thompson just kind of came out. They had their backup. It was Teddy Bridgewater. They had that established, but Skylar Thompson was so impressive in the preseason that they gave him a roster spot so he wouldn't get poached. So you can't really count Skylar Thompson out of this thing, especially with having more experience in this offense, starting a playoff game, even with him having critical errors like that. It would be tough to imagine a coach not valuing that, unless he just doesn't think the guy is capable of running the offense at all. Like, if he just thinks that, listen, he just doesn't have the skill set for it. And certainly, like, with Skylar, like, you saw the night and day between him and Tua with how fast things, were working and operating, and we know that. But yeah, I find that interesting that he's looking at this and he's just like, you could just tell, like, it's almost one of those things that's eating at him. And I think, like, if he was a normal coach, it might just be a complete shredding on this part. And some coaches don't like doing that. Like, even in other sports, if you cross over to Spo's like, he makes it a point. Like, I don't find the value in ripping my team. But there's clearly there's clearly a standard Mike McDaniel doesn't think that they're hitting yet. He goes into talking about his favorite practice from last year being the Philly practice.
We practiced against Philly, and that was the first time offensively that I think that we felt all 11 people executing simultaneously. And, no one scores a practice, but if you guys were to say, hey, they won that day, it wouldn't sound crazy. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl. We did not. But that was a very important practice for us because it was the first time that we clicked, I thought, and it led into the first drive of the preseason game. So yesterday, I liked the fact that guys were straining and very annoyed at the result. That means we're in a good spot. I'm going to just keep going for the next half an hour. And so anyway, about today's practice is more important than last.
So we'll see how it ends up shaking out. But it was interesting. I remember being at that practice last year, and it was interesting because I remember there was so much stuff on Jalen Hurts and so much weight on Jalen Hurts going into last year. And I remember sitting in front of Philly media, and a lot of people were like fawning over Tua and weren't very impressed with Jalen Hurts. And then, he makes the point, like, look where Philly ended up. And listen, Philly had a stacked roster, crazy defense that was sacking quarterback like crazy. So they were a just complete juggernaut of a team. Yes, Jalen Hurts did even deal with some injuries later on in the year that, but they were in such a good spot, didn't hurt them. They could afford him being out. So I think that's the hope here is like, look, the struggles are okay. You don't have to be dazzling the entire time. You don't have to be clicking on necessarily all cylinders the entire camp. They, again, could be on the field right now, lighting stuff up. So it is important to keep those things in perspective. And I think that's the thing that's great about Mike McDaniel. He's not exactly, we was talking about this with Vic Fangio, where he's not exactly like Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio will be like, man, this guy's not ready. Vic Fangio will just come out there, as we've heard, and he'll just be like, David Long, flash plays aren't enough. The safeties, no one's really won the job yet. He's that, and Mike McDaniel will, put everything big picture in perspective, and that's what you like about him. And it's just a case. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I don't know what the hell account this is, but I'll put this up here for you guys to see. But there's this account, I guess it's a troll account, NFL Notify, which says, rumor alert, there are a growing number of people within the Dolphins organization that are beginning to get frustrated with the way Mike McDaniel speaks. The concern stems from the slowness of his responses, speeches, etc., and the constant use of filler words like uhs that is beginning to frustrate players and coaches. Listen, he does take a lot of time to speak. This is like clearly the Onion, but it was funny that Tyreek Hill found the need to respond to this on Twitter, where he goes, where are you getting your info from? Which is just funny. Like, listen, he loves his coach. He just said on Instagram, I think it was last week, he goes like, coolest coach in the league, or our coach is cooler than you, something like that. Tyreek Hill really digs Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill, I'll tell you what, some of the plays I was seeing yesterday on social media, the Cheetah was shredding fools on the Falcons. So I don't know about everybody else, but the Cheetah looked like he was ready to show up in prime time and ready to go for this season. He looks incredible. And apparently, like, him and Jalen Waddle have some kind of competition going on between them right now, where they've split up the wide receiver room and are adding up points on stuff. That's really cool. I like that. I like the fact that they're putting all that stuff together. But it was interesting. Yeah, Mike McDaniel clearly not in a place where he is satisfied where things are. Beauty of it is, though, they haven't even played the first preseason game yet. Plenty of time to go.